Hi, I'm Larkin. Today I want to talk about burnout. And usually, burnout is categorized easily into chronological steps. But burnout is much more complex than that. And it is more of a flow where you can come and go out of different quote unquote stages throughout your day, really. And being a person that went through workplace burnout, I can guarantee you that it's much harder to categorize them into stages per se. So, today I really want to talk about what we categorize as stage one, because essentially everyone has gone through stage one of burnout. And what stage one of burnout is really talked about as is prove your worth. And prove your worth is really when you see it most when you start a job or if you change your position in the workplace. Like you get a bump up on the ladder and you change where you work in the office. And individuals, usually in this stage, are driven to prove that they are capable of doing the job that they were given, often by taking on too many tasks. So they are trying to show the employer or their boss that they are capable of doing all of the skill sets that they were given or promise that they had when they did the interview, and that they're not a mistake, basically. What people need to realize is that you wouldn't have been given the position if the employer or your boss didn't think you could already do it. So you don't need to prove that you can actually do the job because they already know that you can do it because they've invested time, money into you already by giving you the job. They've given you the seat already. So you don't need to prove that you're worthy of the seat. Okay. So that is a complex um, mind screw up that we really just need to erase from how we feel about getting a new position. We've already earned the position. So now that we're in the seat, we need to look at the next position that we want to go to and see how we acquire the skills to do that next position. Because what we do is we take on way too many tasks and we start sacrificing our personal time to have career achievement and taking on overtime to just demonstrate that we're committed to the job um, starts to wane on mental health. And I think mental health has a bad rap on it because we put a lot of different things in that bucket. Okay, so if you have a bucket called mental health, you put in um, schizophrenia and things that you would go see a doctor for. But then we also put stress in mental health and other work induced, or it could be if you are a mom and you have household stressors. There's just a whole lot that we put into what we call now mental health. And I use air quotes because there's just so much that we compile into that bucket that now I think is just getting a bad rap. But it's very much true. We start putting so much stress on ourselves that we can't keep up with other aspects of our life. And when we can't keep up with other aspects of our life, such as the social life with friends that are not affiliated with work, our family, whether it be our own family within our home, or if you don't have that family unit, it could be our given family. Where this all stems from, really, though, where this prove our worth it was rooted in capitalist and capitalism. The capitalist mediocrity and the Protestant work ethic ideology, belief that worth has to be proved through achievement. and productivity. And it was inherited post World War II from the industrialization. And then it was reinforced by Gen X and the baby boomers and their ideals of being a self made success. And then us millennials were raised to believe that um, we were special, which I'm not saying that we're not special, but we internalized it as pressure to just prove that we were special amidst unstable economic realities that we're currently living in. So understand that these are generational patterns that have come to a head. Burnout is really the result of generational patterns that are now showed themselves in a mental health capacity where we're at a crux of stress that we can no longer sustain. So really, we're the generation that needs to break the burnout cycle. How does it show up though? My story of burnout um, really comes from I worked in a workplace of not getting paid enough, paying a credit card to use a credit card. So, having the credit card racked up at its max, paying $300 to use $250 at the grocery store. And just feeling like I could not get ahead. I was sinking. And finally getting a job where I was making more money, but it was a job where I didn't feel like I had the skills and I had to learn as I went. So I felt like I was low man on the totem pole. And I had to get up to speed with my coworkers who I was hired with two other people. And I felt like they had much more tenure than I did in the space where we were working. So for a while, they had a lot more accolades on paper than I did and a lot more experience. And I had mentors there that told me straight up I had to prove my worth. In fact, uh, it was a space where I was hired as to oversee other people, but I had to do their job to prove my worth to them that I could actually manage them. So it was a complete mess from the start where I had to prove my worth instantly when I got that job. Not only was I told it, but mentally I felt like I had to prove my worth when I got there. Growing up, we do it. So this is how we've been programmed. So it's generational. So we've had all these ancestral patterns that we grew up with. Then the workplace reinforces these patterns to us. From childhood, it's reinforced through the school systems where growing up, you're only as good as your grades, right? You're only as good as the good job you get on your school paper when you're in elementary school with your sticker that you get to scratch and sniff, or you get one of those that are fuzzy, right? You're not good when you have all the red on your paper, right? That means bad. Doesn't matter if you're not a good test taker. Doesn't matter if how you're currently learning in school is not the way that you learn. It doesn't matter if you are a visual learner or an auditory learner and they are giving you written papers, but you're much more good at listening and providing the answers orally. Doesn't matter, right? So, right there is from childhood, we also have that pressure. So, all of these factors are contributing to this societal belief of having to prove you're worth a damn. So, how do we fix this? Well, it starts with you, right? It starts with you, and it starts with fixing your belief system. Once you can fix your belief system, if you have children, you have nieces or nephews, or you can influence somebody else in your life, then it kind of spirals out like a stone in water, the ripple effect. So, first, you need to concentrate on yourself. And how do you do that? We need to shift our thinking from achievement based identity to just your self worth in being who you are. And how do you do that? Think of these questions. Who am I trying to prove this to? So every time you find yourself trying to prove your worth to somebody, stop yourself Become conscious of what you're actually doing in the moment and say, wait, I just took overtime. I come in early and I leave late. Why am I doing this? And who am I trying to prove that I'm worthy? And why am I doing that? Remember, sometimes we do things because we were told to do them. Sometimes we look up to people that are multimillionaires or billionaires. They did not grow up in these times. They are not working how we're working currently. And they can tell you, go in early, leave late. Your boss will notice. At the end of the day, I think we all know that we're just a number and we're all replaceable. So who am I trying to prove my worth to? And what would be enough if nobody was watching right now? Because you can have a coworker that does absolutely nothing and they get all the accolades, right? So what would be enough if nobody was watching? Am I doing my job to my fullest capability? And is it checking all the boxes on what my job really is? Because if you're doing your job to the best of your capability and you're actually doing the job at 100%, then you're doing your job. Try to take 30 minutes of doing nothing in your day. Take 30 minutes of absolute silence or 30 minutes to yourself to do something that has no productivity attached to it. Because we need to start realizing that our self-worth is not actually attached to being productive for anything. Your self-worth, you're worth everything without having to do anything. You're worthy without having to prove that to anybody. Once you can establish that, it becomes easier to not having to prove it to anybody. I'm worthy. I know what all my skill sets are. I know what I'm totally capable of doing because I've done all of this in my past. I know what I can do with all of my skill sets. I can do marketing, build websites. I can do compliance. I've trained thousands of people. I've built trainings. I've built quizzes for the trainings. I've done retention efforts. I've done customer service. I've done sales. I've also done recruiting, made the questions for recruiting. I've also done interviews. I've also hired and fired people. I know what all of my skill sets are. So I know my worth. I don't need to prove that to anybody. With my efforts and me doing the job, you can see the quality of my work. When I respond to you, when we're in meetings, or when you ask me something, you can see in my responses how intelligent I am. But I don't have to prove that to anybody. Once you get on that I love myself train, I know my worth, you are less willing to compromise your own morals and ethics, your own my time, because I value my own time. And if I don't put into myself, then I can't give you 100% of myself when I'm at work. That's the person that needs to show up. Try to set daily goals of having enough threshold, if you will. Stop overworking yourself. It's not worth it. The stress that comes along with overworking yourself to prove something to somebody that they don't actually care enough, because they don't care. They don't. You care. You care to prove yourself to somebody else, but they don't care as much as you care. So try to make a list of things that I want to accomplish today in a reasonable amount of time. These are my 8 hours at work. This is what I need to accomplish today to make sure that I set my goal. Is this achievable? Yes or no? If it's not achievable, okay, what can I shave off that can get done tomorrow? And this is my enough threshold. And let it be. Don't try to prove your worth to anybody else. Prove it to yourself that you can get these things done, and then take the time after you're enough threshold and do something for yourself. So everybody falls into the step 1 category. Step 1 of burnout, everybody falls into because it's systematic. It's the way the system has been built over generations of time. To break that, what do? We come to the realization that it has been built that way, that we have fallen into it over generations, over systems such as school, such as parenting, And when we become conscious of that, we can say questions such as, who am I trying to prove it to? What would be enough if nobody was watching? Take 30 minutes of doing nothing to rebuild your self-worth outside of being productive, and set daily enough thresholds to stop yourself from overworking. I hope that helped. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you soon.